If you heard the word Palestine in the news today, it was probably because of this.
A 29-year-old woman and two men, aged 36 and 24, have been arrested on suspicion of a terror offence. That's after two Voyager aircraft were damaged at RAF Bryce Norton in an action that was then claimed by the campaign group Palestine Action. There are expectations that the government is going to officially declare them a proscribed terror group in the near future.
So while counter-terror police in the UK have been busy chasing down non-violent protesters trying to stop a genocide, this is the latest news from Gaza. So Haaretz has published an article confirming that IDF troops are being ordered to shoot unarmed civilians waiting for humanitarian aid. Since May the 27th, 549 people have been killed near aid centres and in areas where residents were waiting for UN food trucks. Now, many of those aid centres are run by the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. It was set up by Israel in coordination with US evangelicals and private security contractors. The GHF distribution centres only open 1 hour a day. So you've got very few of them serving 2 million people, all completely starving. And an IDF soldier told Haaretz how hungry civilians are dealt with if they turn up outside of the single hour that this fake aid organisation opens. So this is from an Israeli army soldier speaking to Haaretz. It's a killing field. Where I was stationed, between 1 and 5 people were killed every day. They're treated like a hostile force. No crowd control measures, no tear gas, just live fire with everything imaginable. Heavy machine guns, grenade launchers, and mortars. Then, once the centre opens, the shooting stops, and they know they can approach. Our form of communication is gunfire. We open fire early in the morning if someone tries to get in line from a few hundred metres away, and sometimes we just charge at them from close range. But there's no danger to the forces. I'm not aware of a single instance of return fire. There's no enemy, no weapons. So it's open 1 hour a day. If you come outside of that 1 hour, you will get machine gunned by Israeli troops. He also said the activity in his area of service is referred to as Operation Salted Fish. Now, that might not mean much to you, but apparently it's the name of the Israeli version of the children's game Red Light, Green Light. Now, if you've seen Squid Games, red light, green light is when you come forward when it's green, you stop when it's red. And in Squid Games, you get shot if you move when the light is red. And the Israeli army seem to be literally recreating this in real life to have a real life version of Squid Games, where if Palestinians move at the wrong time, they get shot with machine guns and grenade launchers. Haaretz reports that the Israeli army is satisfied, though, that GHF's operations have prevented a total collapse of international legitimacy for continuing the war, especially since the war with Iran began. So they think that this has taken off the pressure. You know, there was growing pressure. You have to allow some aid into Gaza. What they've done is they've let this fake aid organisation bring some aid in, and you might get shot while you're queuing up for it. And they think that that has appeased world opinion enough. And I mean, if you look at the statements from our government, I mean, it has, hasn't it? They're not talking about the need to get aid in anymore. An Israeli reservist told Haaretz this: Gaza doesn't interest anyone anymore. It's become a place with its own set of rules. The loss of human life means nothing. It's not even an unfortunate incident like they used to say. So that would be the IDF or the Israeli government saying, oh, it was an unfortunate incident when these civilians got killed. He says now they're just, oh, these civilians got killed. That's what's supposed to happen. Haaretz are also clear that orders to fire on civilians are coming from the top. So they say, in one incident, the soldier was instructed to fire a shell toward a crowd gathered near the coastline. And then this is a quote: technically, it's supposed to be warning fire, either to push people back or stop them from advancing, he said. This is a soldier. But lately, firing shells has just become standard practice. Every time we fire, there are casualties and deaths. And when someone asks why a shell is necessary, there's never a good answer. Sometimes merely asking the question annoys the commanders. In that case, some people began to flee after the shell was fired, and according to the soldier, other forces subsequently opened fire on them. If it's meant to be a warning shot and we see them running back to Gaza, why shoot at them, he asked. Sometimes we're told they're still hiding and we need to fire in their direction because they haven't left. But it's obvious they can't leave if the moment they get up and run, we open fire. So this is literally them chasing civilians around Gaza, desperately looking for food. and to tell them to go away, they shoot at them. And then if they hide from the gunfire, they shoot at them because they're hiding. And then if they try and run away, they shoot them because they're running. Now, this is very clearly a description of a genocidal war. And Haaretz has also published an article today about the true scale of death caused by Israel since October 2023. So they cite a new study by Prof. Michael Spagat, a world-class expert on mortality in violent conflicts. And his study suggests 100,000 Palestinians in Gaza have so far been killed. And this is from the Haaretz report. These data, says Prof. Spagat, position the war in the Gaza Strip as one of the bloodiest conflicts of the 21st century. Even if the overall number of war victims in Syria, Ukraine, and Sudan is higher in each case, Gaza is apparently in first place in terms of the ratio of competence to non-competence killed, as well as in terms of rate of death relative to population size. So in the 21st century, this is the highest proportion of a people who've been killed and the highest proportion of civilians to competence. Now, they say, according to the survey's data, which is consistent with those of the Palestinian Health Ministry, 56% of those killed have been either children up to the age of 18 or women. That's an exceptional figure when compared with almost every other conflict since World War II. Aaron, anyone who commits criminal damage in this country to protest this is now a terrorist.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary, Michael. We talked about this extensively on Tuesday's show. I think there's a very robust centre-right defence of not prescribing Palestine action. We already have a ton of law on the statutes with regards to people committing acts of criminal damage or vandalism or political violence. And that can be addressed through the present system. Whatever your thoughts on Palestine action, and I think what this really is totemic of is the British state. Rather than enforce laws fairly, it tries to make political examples of people. It tries to clamp down on free speech, hence the prescription side of things. And of course, we've had political sentencing. Last summer, we saw racist rioting across the UK, significant amounts of violence, violent disorder, criminal damage. Much of that was outrageous. It was disgusting, actually. But it was notable that you had people being subject to very punitive sentencing for posts on social media, which I don't agree with. They were, illegal. But I don't think they were treated fairly in terms of sentencing. Nobody would say that what happened last summer, however, was terrorism. And in a democracy, there needs to be a space for protest, non-violent protest, criminal damage, etc. Even if it's on the very high end and very serious stuff, it's very important that is not treated as terrorism, because terrorism is effectively viewed as beyond the pale, and you remove basic human rights that you would confer upon people. I mean, that was the whole project with the war on terror, right? People ended up in Guantanamo Bay for 10, 15 years without even facing a charge because they were terrorists. Therefore, they weren't being treated as equal under the law. It's a very dangerous place to be. And ironically, Michael, you had the Home Secretary talking in Parliament recently dressed in the colours of the suffragettes. The suffragettes, of course, famously blew up a house belonging to David Lloyd George, a very famous Welsh politician in this country, one time Prime Minister at the start of the 20th century. So you have the same Home Secretary looking to criminalise dissent, even if it's quite serious protest tactics at play, in a manner which is entirely incongruous with her historical reference points. She would have presumably also have said in the early 20th century that the suffragettes were terrorists, and yet she's celebrating them in 2025. And I do also think, Michael, context is really important. There'll be many people watching or listening to this, and they'll say, well, I just simply do not agree it is ever permissible for UK nationals or people in this country to vandalise, even if it's just minor criminal damage, to vandalise key bits of national infrastructure like our armed forces. There will be people that say that. And I think, and that's a jumping off point. You can have that conversation. But I would then say in response, Michael, going to the story about, people just being shot at with, effectively Gatling guns by the IDF trying to get food, going to the fact that, we're now seeing a growing body of evidence about deformities amongst newborn children, children dying en masse in ICUs because of electricity blackouts, pregnant women being shot, people being steamrolled by heavy artillery by the IDF, etc., etc., etc. surely, even if you think that, you look at all those images, you hear those numbers, 16,000 at least children in Gaza being killed, you can understand why somebody would be so angry and move to do what they did. My view on the prescription, Michael, is this. The reason why Yvette Cooper has done or why she's doing what she's doing, I think is quite simple. I suspect if these cases, and you got more of them over time, if these cases started to go to court, I think juries would be sympathetic. And I suspect that judges would not be giving the kind of sentencing that the government would require. So what you have effectively is a nominally, I mean, it is a democratic government. It's a nominally democratic government effectively trying to bypass the criminal justice system of this country. I find it extraordinary. And finally, on the prescription system, is it really fair? Is it sensible to have a system with regards to prescription where we at Novara Media, I could not wear a Palestine Action logo without facing criminal prosecution as a result, okay? Let alone defend what they do. I can't wear a T-shirt, right? Is it a sensible system where a single person, the Home Secretary, arbitrarily gets to determine what kind of individuals and what kinds of organizations meet that threshold? I don't think so. Because today it's Palestine Action is they're the same as ISIS and the Taliban. Who is it tomorrow? And I think it goes to a broader question we're all facing right now. We're hearing all the time about threats now to the UK homeland. We're going to have, tests with regards to emergency alarms on our phones. This story that came out today. The UK needs to be ready for a full mobilization of war, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We are being primed as the British public, not necessarily for war, but for a return to a wartime economy of sorts. If you're going to spend 5% of GDP on defense, if you're going to more than double defense spending whilst cutting things like disability benefit, people can't get on the housing ladder, a nurse has 50 grand's worth of debt, people see potholes everywhere they live in their local authority, childcare is too expensive, so you can't have that second or third kid, your grandparents are struggling, you can't find good work. If all of that is happening and the government chooses to more than double defense spending, they need to create an environment in which that is at least somewhat seen to be legitimate. How do they do that? They have to scare the hell out of people, right? They have to scare the hell out of people. And so I think this prescription is just one part of that. And I think it's taking this country down a very, very dark route in terms of trying to stop and impede free democratic debate and to also shape the broader parameters of the political conversation. If you do not support more than doubling defense spending or spending £1 billion on 12 F-35s, then you're not patriotic. If you have really strong misgivings about 16,000 dead kids in Gaza, you're an anti-Semite or a terrorist or you're violent. I reject all of that. I would say to anybody that is not a big fan of Palestine Action, they've been moved to do what they've done because of the awful scenes in Gaza, historic scenes in Gaza. It is a genocide. It is ethnic cleansing. In the words of a former Israeli Prime Minister, Ehud Olmert, these are war crimes. And I think free citizens in this country, and we are free citizens, we're allowed to think freely for ourselves, need to ask why the government is criminalizing an organization like this while it supports an administration, Netanyahu's, guilty of some of the most revolting crimes of any advanced economy this century.